Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr. And man, this has been a few weeks since we've had the podcast on. We had some things we had to take care of, and we had a lot going on behind the scenes, so we kind of had to take a little bit of a breather from it and handle some other business. But we back in action, and I'm so glad to be back on this podcast and doing things with this podcast. I love this podcast, man. I absolutely love doing this podcast. We got a lot going on in the sports world the last few weeks, specifically over the last week. You know, we got the Broncos getting straight up embarrassed by the Jets. Got my reaction from that. Drew Brees, he broke Peyton Manning's all-time passing record on Monday night. Baker Mayfield's got the ball rolling out in Cleveland. Cleveland is starting to look like a really decent team. That whole division is getting interesting. The AFC North might just actually be the most interesting division in the National Football League. We got Mike Tomlin being fined $25,000 for criticizing NFL refs, and rightfully so. You know how I feel about the officiating that has been going on in the NFL. We got that and a few other little tidbits and things to get to on the Undrafted podcast with Rochelle Hamilton Jr. So without delaying it any further, we'll go ahead and get started with the Low with Ro. The Denver Broncos got blown out by the New York Jets on Sunday, 34-16, in a game that has really become, man, it's become a way of life for the Broncos recently. The Broncos, they got straight up embarrassed. I mean, that's all. There's no other way to put it. The Broncos got embarrassed once again. The Broncos have lost their last 3 games, and this current losing streak is starting to look a little too familiar to the 2017 season. Now, let me just come out and say it. The Broncos are terrible. I mean, it's just no other way to put it. I'm sorry. There's just no other way to put it. They're not terrible from a talent perspective. They've got a lot of talent on this squad. It's the coaching and the play calling and the scheming that has the Broncos looking straight up terrible. Because the Broncos, they are consistently getting outcoached, outplayed, and outmatched. And this is frustrating because this team has a lot of talent. This team has the talent to be a dominant playoff caliber team if they were coached better and put in better schemes and better situations, especially on the defense, which has been Denver's strength the last few years. Well, it was Denver's strength for a few years, especially the last few years of the Peyton Manning era. But this last 2 years, defense ain't been what it is in Denver, Colorado. Now, the Broncos of this season may not be as talented as some of their squads in the past, but they've still got the talent to be able to get it done. You know, on offense, you got Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman, Cortland Sutton. Those are just some of the big-time names on the Broncos offense. On the defensive side of the ball, you still got Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, Chris Harris Jr., Justin Simmons, my dog, Brandon Marshall, and the rookie Josie Jewell, who's making a lot of plays, the outlaw on defense. So they got guys that can play. You know, talent is not the question in Denver. Part of the problem is some of this talent, though, hasn't showed up to play. You know, Von Miller, he's going through a cold streak. I don't know what's going on with Von. I think it might be between the ears, or maybe the coaches are not putting him in the best, situation for him to be able to make plays. But he's going through a three-game losing streak. He's going through a 3-game cold streak where he hadn't had a sack since week 2 against the Raiders. You know, coming into week 3 and week 4, Von was leading the league in sacks with 4. He had 3 sacks in week 1 against Seattle. He had a sack week 2 against the Oakland Raiders. And since then, Von's been pretty quiet. But you know what? I'm not really worried about Von. Von will get it together. You know, I think it's just a cold snap that he's going through. And then also I think opposing offenses might be doing to him what they did last year, scheming double teams and things like that for him. So I think it's a combination of Denver coaches not putting him in a situation to be able to be the most successful, as well as opposing offenses really kind of game planning specifically for Von Miller. Now, if you ask me, it's really kind of starting to look like some of the Broncos players have given up on Vance Joseph and the staff. And if they haven't given up totally, it looks like they're starting to give up on this coaching staff. And that's a dangerous deal, because when players start to give up on you, you're on the verge of losing the locker room. And when you lose the locker room, it is extremely hard to get back. Now, as far as the fans have basically given up on this coaching staff. Fans gave up on this staff last season. So I'm not really surprised about the fans giving up on him at this juncture. Now, I defended Vance Joseph last year. I defended him coming into this year. But I'm going to be honest, it's getting real hard to defend Vance Joseph and this coaching staff because last year I kept telling folks, man, hey, he's a rookie head coach. First-time head coach is going to be a learning curve. Our quarterback situation is bad. Then, coming into this season, I was like, okay, well, they got a halfway decent quarterback in Case Keenum. He's got his feet up under him a little bit. He's got some time. He's got one season under his belt. People get better with time, yada, yada, yada. And now it's really kind of starting to look like 2018's turning into 2017 as far as the Broncos are concerned. Now, I'll be honest, from the jump, I didn't see in Vance Joseph what John Elway saw in Vance Joseph because I've questioned this hire from the jump because I personally was leaning towards Kyle Shanahan or an offensive-minded coach. Vance Joseph is a defensive-minded coach. But in today's NFL, with these offenses being the way they are, you're even starting to see more college style offenses make their way into the NFL. The NFL, the rules are tailored to the offense. So for me, I'm like, okay, Denver really needs an offensive-minded coach. The name, they floated Sean McVay's name in the Broncos. I guess you could call it the war room or whatever, but they didn't even bring him in for an interview. But we'll talk about him a little bit later because that that right there baffles me because when you look at Vance Joseph's resume next to Kyle Shanahan or next to Sean McVay's resume, it's like, dude, how did John Elway and the Broncos come to the conclusion that Vance Joseph was the guy for this job? Now, the Broncos, they tried to get Vance Joseph as their head coach when they fired John Fox right before the 2015 season, but they couldn't get him because I think it was either Cincinnati wouldn't let him out of his contract. So it almost looks like John Elway and the Broncos had tunnel vision when they made this hire. And when he was the defensive coordinator in Miami, Miami's defense was nothing to write home about. And when I did my research, I'm like, dude, what did they see in this guy? I mean, he's a great guy. You can tell he's a really good dude. You can tell he knows football, but it's a difference between knowing football, having football knowledge, and really being able to coach a team of 53 men consistently to give them the best chance to win on Sundays. Fast forward to now in Denver, and losses and blowout losses, they're becoming a way of life under Vance Joseph and his staff. And not only is the amount of losses concerning in Denver, but it's the way the Broncos are losing. That's really what's setting off alarms. Even in 2017, I think it was 6 or 7 of their games last year, the Broncos were blown out by at least 2 touchdowns. And it's really kind of starting to look that way in 2018. Now, under Vance Joseph, in his era, the Broncos are 7-14 all time under him. They're 1-9 on the road. These guys, they consistently look unprepared. They consistently look outmatched. And as for Sunday, did the New England Patriots, did they pack up and move to New York? Because the Broncos made the New York Jets look like the New York Patriots. I mean, this game on Sunday was pathetic. It's no other way to put it. This game was flat out pathetic. The Broncos defense had been priding itself on stopping the run in previous weeks. Coming into Sunday, the defense gave up just 2 runs, just two runs of 12 yards or more to the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Ravens. Then they flew up to New York. Isaiah Crowell and Bilal Powell, they looked like actual Jets because they flew right by the Denver defense. It was almost like every time they were on the ground, they flew by this defense. The Broncos defense gave up 323 yards rushing on Sunday. 323 yards. Like, are you serious right now? 323 yards in the rushing game. The last time Denver had a game that was even being close to that bad was in 2010 when they gave up 328 yards on the ground to the Oakland Raiders. Now, why is 2010 so significant? Because 2010 is the year where the Broncos were historically bad on both sides of the ball. That's also the year when things got so bad they fired Josh McDaniels halfway throughout the year. And then, of course, Eric Studesville filled in on an interim basis to finish out the season. So 2010 was a historically bad year in Broncos history. 2018 is kind of starting to look Well, it's 2018 is starting to look that way. I mean, ain't no other way to put it. Isaiah Crowell busted off a big 77-yard touchdown run in the second quarter, and he was just getting started that day because he was just tying up his shoes. Because as the game went on, he busted off some more runs, 54, 36, and 15 yards. He finished up the day with 219 yards. That is almost unheard of. He broke a Jets franchise record in the process. Bilal Powell, the Jets' number 2 running back, he added another 104 yards to that total. And to put salt in the Denver defense's wounds, it wasn't bad enough that they had already allowed all these rushing yards. To pour salt into the wounds of the Denver defense, most of these big runs came to the outside, which the Denver defense prides itself on shutting down because the Denver defense, they're fast, they're speedy, they're quick. And most of the time when you try to run something to the outside of these dudes, they're there to shut it down. Not on Sunday, because not only were they hitting them up the inside, they were hitting these dudes on the outside. Like, the defense just had a bad day. And that happens. It happens every single season with every single team. And that's also why it's important for you to be technically and fundamentally sound on both sides of the ball, because if the defense doesn't have it one day, your offense has to step it up. If your offense doesn't have it one day, your defense has got to step it up. If neither one of them have it that day, your special teams has got to step up. Like, that's what it's all about in the game of football. You know, when one unit doesn't have it, another unit has to pick up the slack. That's why it's called a team. That didn't happen with the Broncos on Sunday. And as far as the Denver secondary, don't even get me started on the Denver secondary, because the Broncos, they had one of the best secondaries in the league when they had Chris Harris Jr., Aqib Talib, Bradley Roby as the number 3. They had Darian Stewart in the backfield. They started integrating Justin Simmons back there with him and Will Parks. Like, they were integrating these 2 young safeties, but they still had some veteran leadership up front. Then they go and they let Aqib Talib go in the offseason. They got cheap, didn't want to pay him the $11 million salary. So they let Aqib, they didn't let him go. They traded Aqib Talib to the Rams, and they put Bradley Roby into the starting spot. And Bradley Roby is not ready. He's not ready. He's not ready to be a starting cornerback in the National Football League. Bradley Roby got burned consistently Sunday. I mean, he looked like burnt toast on Sunday. He gave up both of Robbie Anderson's big touchdown plays came on Bradley Roby. I mean, Bradley Roby is a really good nickel corner. He's a good, solid backup cornerback. He's a really, really good nickel corner, which that's where he excels, is in the nickel packages. Those specialty packages that the Denver Broncos run, that's where Bradley Roby does his most damage. And that's really where the Broncos did their most damage when they put him in a starting role, because he's not a starting cornerback. He is a solid backup. He's a solid backup, but he's not like an anchor type, like shut down cornerback. He's just not. But hey, you know, when you go cheap, that's what you get. You get what you pay for. Outside of Chris Harris Jr., can you really tell me who do the Broncos have at the corner spot? The Broncos were so thin at corner, they called up Pac-Man Jones, who was literally chilling on his couch, and they had him come in to add some veteran depth to the secondary. Now, if you remember, the last time we heard from Pac-Man Jones, he was beating the brakes off that airport worker down in Atlanta because the airport worker, you know, stepped to him, and Pac-Man Jones, he did what he had to do. He defended himself. And you know, Pac-Man Jones, he's good. He's a really good corner, but Pac-Man is 35 years old. He's got less football in front of him than he's got behind him. So that's where the Broncos secondary is. As far as the safety, they got my dog Justin Simmons, number 31. Like, I love this dude. This dude's going to be a top 5 safety in the next year or two. Mark my words. Justin Simmons, he's a really good player. He's a good tackler. He's smart. He's tall. He's athletic. This dude's good in coverage. He's got a good vertical. Justin Simmons, I'm telling you, number 31, keep your eyes out for that dude. That dude's going to be a problem for opposing offenses in the future. The problem in the secondary, well, and then too at the safety spot, they've got Darian Stewart. He's a big thumper. He's that enforcer type of safety. He lays the wood on opposing offenses. You know, I still remember in the 2015 season when he came to the Broncos, he was a big reason why the Broncos won that Super Bowl that year, because he lit Cam Newton up in that Super Bowl. He lit quarterbacks up all season. Quarterbacks and receivers, he lit them up all season, as he's been doing consistently since he's been in Denver. But the problem in the secondary for the Broncos is the depth and the scheme. They're not very deep at secondary, so when the starters get dinged up or they got to come out for a breather, opposing quarterbacks, they start licking their chops, they start rubbing their hands because they know that they about to slice this defense up. I say that, but lately, it really hasn't mattered who's back there because the play calling and the scheme on defense has been bad, just to be honest. It's been bad. I said on the podcast a few weeks ago that the Broncos' strength in the secondary was in press man coverage. Hitting the receiver, sticking with the receiver, running with him, getting physical with him, jamming him at the line. That's where the Broncos used to excel when it came to coverage. But here lately, they've been getting torched in man coverage and zone coverage. And this is precisely why Denver should have kept Wade Phillips. But again, they didn't want to pay Wade Phillips, so they let him go. And he's over with the Rams, who the Broncos just happened to play on Sunday, this coming Sunday. And, the Broncos, they put Joe Woods in this position, and, you get what you pay for. Where the Broncos miss Wade Phillips, he's really good at coaching. He's really good at situational coaching, knowing when to send the dogs or knowing when to just send 3 or 4 and drop everybody into coverage, or disguising schemes, disguising coverages, disguising blitzes. Wade Phillips was a master at that. And the Broncos, they miss Wade Phillips. I mean, their defense the last few years in 2017 and this year hasn't been very good under Joe Woods. And as far as the scheme and the play calling, the red flag really showed itself week 4 against the Kansas City Chiefs in that Monday night game. The Chiefs had gotten themselves into a 2nd and 30. This was towards the end of the game. The Chiefs were at 2nd and 30. And all Denver has to do, you blitz them and let the guys on the back end drop them in zone coverage, keep the ball in front of you, let them go 3 and out, and then Denver gets the ball back, and you can win the game. But did Joe Woods call for that? Did the Broncos call for that? No. Instead, they didn't blitz the Chiefs on that play, and they dropped the secondary in man coverage. Pat Mahomes, he dances around, does a little bit, makes a big thing happen, gets 23 yards on the play. On the very next play, 3rd and 7. That's the kind of play you want to run man coverage. And the Broncos, they drop in the zone coverage. And, of course, the Chiefs convert. And the rest is history. That's just one of the examples of some of the play calling and the scheming that's going on with this defense under Joe Woods. Like, I'm over Joe Woods. I'm over his scheme. I'm over his play calling. This defense is offensive. And this defense has considerably dropped off from when Wade Phillips was running it. And this is what I didn't understand with the whole Wade Phillips thing, because Wade Phillips, both years that he was in Denver, Wade Phillips' defenses were top 5, 2015 and 2016. Most teams, when a defensive coordinator has a defense plan at that high of a level, they keep him around for as long as they can. But what did the Denver Broncos do? What did they do to pay Wade Phillips for running a top 5 defense both years he was here? They let him walk out of the door. And this is a league that is heavily favored towards the offense. So for the fact that you can sit here, you have a coordinator who can draw up defenses, who can disguise coverages, who can disguise blitzes, who can bring blitzes from, literally all over the field. He does this both years he's here, and you let him walk. Most other NFL teams would have said, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep this dude around because my defense is already taken care of. Now all I got to do is just handle the offense, and then we good. Nope, not the Denver Broncos. The Broncos went from being a top 5 defense under Wade Phillips consistently to now being in the bottom half of the league, dropping all the way down to number 18. Another thing I don't like about these Joe Woods type defenses, they don't disguise the coverages, they don't disguise the blitzes, and they really just want to rush the passer. There's no mixing it up. There's no specialty mixes. There's no specialty blitzes. There's no specialty coverages. It's just they want to line up, rush the passer, and that's all they want to do. And that's why the Broncos are getting consistently hit on defense. But, it is what it is. And you want to know another fun fact? Wade Phillips is now the defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams, who just happened to play the Broncos this Sunday. So the Broncos, they're going to be on the receiving end of Wade Phillips because Wade Phillips is going to want to embarrass them. Then you got Sean McVay on the other side of the ball, the head coach. He's running the whole show, especially the offense. He took Jared Goff from basically looking like a bust to looking like a franchise quarterback. The Los Angeles Rams, they are the best team in the National Football League right now. I think they're averaging somewhere between 35 and 38 points a game. The Broncos, they could have had Sean McVay. They didn't even talk to Sean McVay. His name came up a few times in their war room, but that was about it. They didn't make any move. They didn't bring him in for an interview. They let Wade Phillips walk. And, when I look at the Los Angeles Rams, I really just shake my head because I look at it and I say, man, the Broncos, that could have been the Denver Broncos. That could have been us. But, here we are going through another year of 2017 all over again. And this is just the defensive side of the ball. I ain't even talked about the offense. Here's the thing with the Broncos offense. They're better than what they were last year, but they're still very ineffective, and they still don't score enough points. So they don't score often enough. The Broncos in the offseason, they go out, they give Case Keenum $25 million guaranteed. Case Keenum has not lived up to that contract at all. I mean, it's just no other way to put it. And the thing about Case Keenum, I like Case Keenum. He's a great person. He's a great guy. But he ain't the guy for Denver, and it's already starting to show. Now this could change because we've still got 10 weeks in the regular season to go. But so far, Case Keenum ain't showing to be the dude. Case Keenum threw 7 interceptions all last season. All last season. He threw his 7th interception on Sunday, and we're just at week 6. And the thing when I look at the Case Keenum signing, it's like, man, okay. Y'all went out and y'all signed a quarterback, $25 million guaranteed for 2 years, when Denver already had the number 5 pick in the draft. All they had to do, they really liked Baker Mayfield. They could have you would have had to sell the farm to get him and move up to 1 to get in front of the Browns to draft him. But if they really liked him, they could have saved the money that they spent on Case Keenum. They could have saved that and gave that to Aqib Talib and some other defensive playmaker or another offensive playmaker, a tight end or somebody, and they could have drafted one of these quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold. But, it is what it is. And then as far another thing with Case Keenum, what should have been a red flag for the Broncos is the fact that the Minnesota Vikings were so willing and ready to let him walk. NFL, well, let me rephrase that. Good to great. Well, I ain't even going to say that because there's not many great NFL quarterbacks. Good to really good NFL quarterbacks are hard to come by. And the fact that the Minnesota Vikings were able and willing to let Case Keenum walk so freely, that should have given John Elway and the Broncos a red flag from the jump. Because ain't no team out there that's in need of a quarterback like the Vikings were after Sam Bradford went down. Ain't no team out there that's in need of a quarterback going to let one just walk away. And the fact that the Vikings were willing to let him walk, that should have been a red flag to the Broncos there. Because if you look at Case Keenum's history, his history says he's more so the quarterback that we're seeing right now, more so than he is the guy that we saw last year. I thought Case Keenum was going to be like Jake Plummer when he came in, a dude who's a good stopgap quarterback. He's not a superstar, but he's a pretty good quarterback who was just underappreciated and just needed a little time to shine. But so far, Case Keenum's making the Vikings look smart for letting him walk because he's not seeing the field well. He's locking on to one receiver, staring him down, and when defenses see that, of course, they lock onto that, and it's a pick every time. This is especially disappointing because there was so much hype that came about with Case Keenum in the offense in offseason and training camp, and now when they put him out on the field, this is what we're getting. Now, all is not lost, though. I mean, he's done some really good things. I mean, they moved the ball well between the 20s, which is something they couldn't even do last season, so there is one positive there. But at the end of the day, NFL defenses, they have no problem letting you move the ball those 40 yards between the 20s. They'll give that up all day. But when you get to the 20, when you get to that red zone, that's where they're locking down. That's when the traffic gets thick, and that's where the Broncos are having the most problems. Because the Broncos, they can't seem to score. They can't seem to score often enough. They can't even seem to score enough. Because the Broncos are not a team that's going to beat you coming from behind. They have the receivers and the running game to do it, but they just don't have the quarterback to do it. I just don't see it. And maybe I'm being a little too hard. Maybe I'm being a little too doom and gloom. But after what I've seen from the Broncos the last 3 weeks, it's really hard to be optimistic about anything with this team. Well, there is one thing to be optimistic about: the running game. The Broncos have one of the best running games in the league. But, of course, they abandoned the run too soon. They did that Sunday against the Jets. They did that last week, Monday night, against the Chiefs. Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, they were running the ball down the Chiefs' throat. And for whatever reason, in the second half, the Broncos decided to abandon the run. They were running the ball down the New York Jets' throats. And for whatever reason, the Denver Broncos decided to abandon the run game. Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman combined for 128 yards on the ground Sunday. They could have had a lot more, but I digress. It is what it is. You know, I love the Denver Broncos. I absolutely love the Denver Broncos, but this team is so disappointing this year. They are so painful to watch under this coaching staff. You know, Vance Joseph at this rate, if they keep losing at this rate, Vance Joseph ain't gonna make it through the season. You know, he's just not. And because the Denver Broncos are not an organization that tolerates losing. The Broncos haven't had back-to-back losing seasons since 1972. They are in grave danger of breaking that streak because the Broncos right now are 2-3. They got the Los Angeles Rams coming in Sunday. They're more than likely going to be 2-4. There's no way I see Denver winning this game. Then they got the Thursday night game against the Cardinals. Well, the Cardinals are a really bad team as well, but Denver has to travel. So that makes a short week even shorter. So there's a good chance that by this time next week, the Denver Broncos are 2-5. And as optimistic as I like to stay about the Broncos, even in the midst of losing streaks and things like that, it is really hard for me to see this being anything other than maybe a 7-9 team. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know how they're going to turn this around. Because like I said, not only is this team not playing well, but if you've heard guys like Chris Harris Jr. and Derek Wolfe, if you've heard their post-game interviews, these players are getting real tired of coming out here, doing what they got to do, practicing hard, running hard, lifting hard, eating the way they have to eat to keep their bodies right, spending all this money to make sure their body's right for recovery, assistance, and things like that. They're getting real tired of doing all this, and then they're coming out and they're getting their ass kicked on Sunday. I mean, it is what it is. These dudes are tired. These dudes are tired of putting in all this work and catching all these L's. And if the Broncos aren't careful, if they're not careful, some of these dudes just might start requesting trades and requesting releases and things like that. But because when you start getting players who are publicly calling your coaches out in the media, as has been done by a few of these players, and they're not outright calling them out, but they're throwing subtle shots through the media. When you start having that kind of stuff happen, then that opens the door for worse things to happen. You know, the Denver Broncos, man, this is so disheartening. They are one of the best organizations in all of pro sports. They really are. They are one of the truly good organizations in all of professional sports. And to see them get torn down like this, it's frustrating. You know, I'm over this coaching staff. I am 100% over this coaching staff. Well, now that I've been all doom and gloomy, you know, we're going to switch gears and talk about my dog, Drew Brees. Like, I love Drew Brees. Drew Brees is the man in the NFL when it comes to passing yards. The Saints quarterback reset NFL history Monday night when he's passed Peyton Manning 71,940 yards to slide right on in the first place on the NFL's all-time passing yards list. Brees grabbed the record on a 62-yard touchdown pass to Traquan Smith in the second quarter against the Redskins. He finished the night 22 of 40 and passing 363 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that puts his yardage total at 72,103 yards, 499 touchdown passes. First of all, I am so happy for Drew Brees. Like, I love Drew Brees. Like, as a person, as a football player, like, Drew Brees is one of the truly, truly good guys in the National Football League. Now, when he was out there in San Diego with the Chargers in the early 2000s, I did not see this production coming from Drew Brees. I honestly did not. But since he came over to the Saints in 2006 and teamed up with Sean Payton, Drew Brees has turned into really the best pure passer that the NFL has ever seen. You know, and the funny thing is, you know, he's a shorter guy. You know, he's 6 feet. He might actually be 5'11", but they list him at 6 feet. You know, he's small. He's kind of short. You know, and then when he was out in San Diego, the Broncos used to whoop up on Drew Brees and the Chargers. So, when he was out in San Diego, and then I remember when he got that shoulder injury and they said he was going to go out to New Orleans, I was like, New Orleans? Like, man, the Broncos used to wreck shop on this dude. New Orleans? The Saints. Like, New Orleans? The Saints? How's that going to work? Man, look, Drew Brees teamed up with Sean Payton, and he shut me and every other, I ain't going to say a critic because I liked him even then out there, but anybody who ever kind of doubted it, he shut him up. But that just goes to show you that, Drew Brees is a testament to what hard work and dedication will do. Because here's a dude who's 6 feet tall at most, and he's dominated teams, and he's made defenses consistently look straight up foolish. Because think about this for a second. 72,000 yards? 72,000 yards is over 41 miles. 41 miles worth of passes from one Drew Brees. Now, true enough, Drew Brees doesn't have the biggest arm. And those people who like to rant and rave about guys and arm strength and, he's got a really big arm. He's got a cannon. He's got a rocket. And he can make all the throws and da-da-da-da-da. He's not a guy that has he's got the biggest arm. He can make all of the throws, but he doesn't have the biggest arm. But at the end of the day, who cares? Because Drew Brees is deadly accurate. He's the most accurate passer in NFL history. Drew Brees has a career accuracy rate of 67%. He completed 72% of his passes last year in 2017. And on Monday night, his game Monday night, it was off the charts. Check his accuracy out Monday night. He was 26 of 29 passes for an 89.6% completion rate. That's almost unheard of in the NFL, even in an NFL today that favors heavily towards the offense. Now, when Drew Brees hurt his shoulder, he was given a 10 to 20% chance of ever playing football again. And this was all at the end of the 2005 season. Matter of fact, that shoulder injury happened against the Denver Broncos. And look at Drew Brees now. Like, most guys would have hung up their cleats with those kinds of odds at that point in his career. But Drew Brees, nah, this cat is a warrior, man. Like, if you can't tell, like, how much respect I have for this man, because before Drew Brees got to the Saints, they were bad. They were so bad, people called them the Aints. Matter of fact, the Saints were so bad, like, Saints fans were the ones that started that whole brown paper bag thing. Like, I'm a fan, and I'm going to go to the game because I'm a fan and I support my team, but I'm embarrassed of this team, so I'm embarrassed to show my face as a fan. So I'm a fan, but I'm not going to let you know that I'm a fan of the Saints. That's how bad the Saints were, that, the fans didn't even want to let themselves be seen representing them. So now comes Drew Brees, and then he comes in, him and Sean Payton, and they turn this whole thing around. And you also can't forget what Drew Brees has done, not only for that squad, the New Orleans Saints, but what he's done for the city of New Orleans itself. Because he came in and he started helping immediately with, recovering from Hurricane Katrina to his endless charity works around the city, around the area, around the state. This dude's a great ambassador for the NFL. And, he really represents hope and positivity, not only to the team, but to the city itself. Because I got a lot of friends that are from New Orleans and that are from Louisiana, that whole area. And even if they're not fans of the Saints, they might be fans of the other team. They might not even like football altogether. But if you ask them anything about Drew Brees, they will rant and they will rave about how good of a dude he truly is and the many, many things that he's done for that city and for that area. Now, there are some people who will point to this and they'll say that, this record doesn't really mean much because of the way the NFL has tailored the rules to protect the quarterback and really kind of favor the offense. And to me, that's 100% wrong. And don't get me wrong, I completely get it. I completely understand what they're saying because NFL quarterbacks are overprotected. They are severely overprotected. But at the end of the day, Drew Brees can't help it in the era that he plays in. I mean, it's not like he asked to be put in this era. I mean, he can't help it. He doesn't make the rules. He's not with the guys up in the league office in New York making these rules. But what Drew Brees does do is he goes out and he consistently dominates defenses. He consistently does his job. And at the end of the day, I mean, you could say that the rules are tailored toward the offense, but on the other side of the field, those 11 guys on defense, they getting paid too. And on defense, they're allowed to stop Drew Brees and his offense from doing what they're trying to do, which is score the ball. So while that argument may, hold some water depending on who you ask, at the end of the day, I completely disagree with him. Because Drew Brees consistently throws for 4,000 and 5,000 yard seasons. Consistently. Check these records out. Drew Brees holds the records for most consecutive 4,000 yard passing seasons with 12. He's got the most 5,000 yard passing seasons with 5. The rest of the NFL all time has 4. He's got the most seasons leading the NFL in pass yards with 7. He's got the most career 400-yard passing games at 16. And he's already at over 1,600 yards for 2018. And we still got 10 weeks to go in the regular season. The NFL record books are becoming heavily littered with the name Drew Brees. And rightfully so, because Drew Brees ain't human. Think about it. By the time Drew Brees is done with his playing career, this man will more than likely have passed for over 80,000 yards. That is insane. That is an insane amount of yards. But Drew Brees in that offense where they throw, that is a throwing offense. Drew Brees and Sean Payton, that kind of offense, they say, hey, you know what? We're going to go out here and we're going to do what we do, and we dare you to stop us. Other offenses, they say, hey, you know what? Let's figure out what the defense is weak at stopping, and let's try to exploit that. Nah, Drew Brees and Sean Payton, they say, nah, bruh. We coming into your house or you coming into ours, and we going to do what we do, and you can do your best to try and stop us. And if you stop us, cool. But if not, it's going to be a long day for you and your defense. Now, sure, you can point to Drew Brees and his 7-6 playoff record, but that's not all on him, because outside of the defense that they had in that 2009 season when they won the Super Bowl and they beat Peyton Manning and the Colts, the Saints, up until last year, they really didn't have any defense. I mean, Drew Brees, and that's another thing that makes him so great, because not only did he have to go out and do what he does, which is just, try to drive the ball downfield and score, but he had to go into a lot of these games knowing that his defense wasn't going to be able to stop this opposing offense. So it's like, man, I'm going to have to go out here and score 35 or 40 points at least to get us this dub. And, hey, more often than not, he went out and he did it. So, though that 7-6 playoff record, of course, is not all on him. Now, what Drew Brees does need to do in order to solidify his NFL legacy even more is win another Super Bowl ring. That's what he needs to do. And they got a great chance of doing it this year because the defense is really kind of starting to come together. Drew Brees and the offense, they're going to do their thing. You already know that. So if he gets another 1 or 2 rings, he's already in the top 10 quarterbacks to ever play the game. He gets another 1 or 2 rings, you almost have to put Drew Brees into the top 5. Because by that time, he'll more than likely have all the records. He may not be as accomplished as Tom Brady, but, he'll have all the records. So you put Drew Brees with all those records and he's got 2 or 3 rings, he's got to be in the top 5 all-time quarterbacks. And I really, truly, honestly hope Drew Brees gets it. Just as long as it's not against the Denver Broncos. All right, man, we're going to switch gears, and it's time for I'm in and I'm out. Let's see what I'm in or out on today. I think we only got one of these today. This is a shortened version. I think we only got one of these today. Baker Mayfield led the Browns to their first divisional win since 2015 on Sunday when the Browns beat the Ravens 9-6 in Cleveland in overtime. Now, this comes 17 days after he got his first taste of NFL action back in Week 3 against the Jets. Now, the win against the Jets was the first win for the Browns in 635 days, and almost immediately, folks started claiming Cleveland to be Baker's town now that LeBron is gone. And this win on Sunday did nothing but add more gasoline to that fire. So, is Baker Mayfield the man in Cleveland now? I'm out on this for now. Now, with that being said, now he'll never replace LeBron James in Cleveland. That ain't gonna happen because LeBron, he's got that school there, which is, oh man, I love that. He's got that school there, and on top of that, LeBron did bring Cleveland their first championship since the Jim Brown days. So, he'll never replace LeBron. And on top of that, LeBron is from there. So, I mean, you'll never replace the king in Cleveland. Let's get that straight right doggone now. But I like Baker Mayfield. I like Baker Mayfield. I like Baker Mayfield a lot. He's the most NFL-ready quarterback of all the quarterbacks who were taken in April, and he's showing that as he's a starter over in Cleveland right now. He's looked very good in every game that he started. Now, Baker's looked so good that I hated the fact that he was never going to fall to the Broncos at spot 5 in the draft. But, of course, like I said earlier, the Broncos, they could have done some things to make that happen. Baker's a leader. He's competitive. He's got that fire. He's just got that quality about him, man. He's got a quality about him that you just can't teach. You can't coach it. He's just got it. They talk about that a lot. He's just got it. Baker Mayfield is a natural-born baller. Now, you think about what Baker Mayfield did in that game against the Jets. Let's go back a few weeks. He comes into this game as the backup to this point. He's the backup, which means he doesn't get any reps with the starters in practice with the ones. He comes into this game knowing that he has to be mentally ready, but he won't be physically ready because, it's going to take him some time to catch up. That's just human nature. He's got to come off the bench. And not only that, he's got to do it while his team is down 14-0, and he's got to try to get a win some way, somehow. Baker comes in and he starts moving the ball down the field, and all of a sudden, things start picking up. It was like things start picking up, and even the kicker seemed to get better when Baker Mayfield was in the lineup. Now, having said all that, we also got to keep this in perspective because the Jets, they weren't prepared for him to play that night. Then he goes out on Sunday. Well, he had the game against the Raiders, and, of course, they dropped that one, but he still dropped like 42 points on the Raiders. Then he goes out Sunday, and he beats a Ravens team who has a very solid defense. The Ravens defense hasn't allowed a second-half touchdown all season. One of the best defenses in the league. So he goes out, he beats them in overtime. So naturally, with the Ravens having the defense that they have, you would think that they would eat this rookie alive, right? Not necessarily, because Baker did end up finishing Sunday with 25 of 43, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. So, not too bad. Not too bad of a day's work. Then you have Ravens defensive coordinator Wink Martindale comparing him to Brett Favre and John Elway. I was fine and dandy with everything with Baker Mayfield, well, most of it anyway, until this. Good Lord have mercy. Baker Mayfield has started 2.5 games. Can we please let this man get some more games under his belt? Let this man be more consistent before we start hopping on the Baker hype train. I like Baker. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback. He might even turn out to be a Hall of Famer. But can we just let the season play out before we start doing this? This is a troubling trend that we've seen in the NFL the last few years. Specifically, like the last 3 or 4 years, where a dude gets drafted high, I get it, he's the number 1 pick, and then all of a sudden they start throwing all these lofty expectations on him, and then when a guy doesn't do it or he starts, going through a little rough patch, people just tear him down. We did this with Robert Griffin III. We saw what happened. He hurt his knee, and then NFL defenses, they caught up with him. RG3 hadn't been the same. Or even more recent example, right here in Dallas, Dak Prescott. 2016, Dallas Prescott. 2016, Dak Prescott, he steps in for an injured Tony Romo, takes the league by storm. Nobody knows anything about Dak Prescott, and the Dallas offense. So he comes in, they go 13-3. They catch a lot of people off guard, catch him by storm, and oh my God, Dak Prescott, he's Hall of Famer. He's going to do this, he's going to do that, and he's going to set the NFL on fire. And oh man, you even had some people saying he was better than Troy Aikman. And it's just like, bruh, seriously, come on now. And now you look at Dak Prescott today, and now you already have questions coming out as to whether or not this dude is even starting quarterback material. And the thing is, man, I like Baker Mayfield, and I don't think that's going to happen with Baker Mayfield, to be honest. I really don't. I think Baker Mayfield is going to be one of the standout quarterbacks for years to come. My whole point is, can we just let time play out? Because NFL defenses, they don't even have a lot of film on Baker Mayfield yet. It generally takes an NFL defense and these coordinators, it generally takes them anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to really find out what a guy is good at and what's his Achilles. Once they start zeroing in on that kind of stuff, that's when the true test comes, because that's when a quarterback is either going to hit that wall or he's going to jump over it. And that hadn't happened to Baker yet. Now, I think Baker's going to jump over that wall. I don't think Baker's going to have any problem because this dude is a smart dude. He will outwork almost anybody in the room. And yeah, Baker's going to be, I think he's going to be okay. My whole deal is, can we just stop? Can we just kind of slow the Baker hype train down? Let's just slow it down. Slow it down. Now, one thing that he does have in his favor is that Browns defense, because that Browns defense is a lot better than what people thought they would be coming into this season. The Browns defense is a really big reason why I could see Cleveland going 8-8 this year. Now, I told y'all before the season even started, the Cleveland Browns were one of my Cinderella squads. So it's them, the Broncos, and the Bears. But the Broncos, they kind of disappoint me right now. So, it looks like I'm 2 for 3. So I guess that ain't too bad. Now, some people say Hugh Jackson was wrong for starting Tyrod Taylor to begin the season over Baker Mayfield from the jump. But, I don't agree with that at all. Because Hugh Jackson, there was no way he could win in this situation. Because on one hand, if he puts Baker in too late, and the Browns haven't won a whole lot, it's, oh, man, he should have started Baker sooner. Like, what, Hugh Jackson is tripping, yada, yada, yada. But on the other hand, if he puts Baker Mayfield in too early and he struggles, then it's, oh, he wasn't ready to play. Why did Hugh put him in there so soon? Then you at that point, you run the chance of his confidence taking a hit. And when a quarterback or a football player, period, when their confidence takes a hit, it's extremely hard for him to get it back. So from that aspect, Hugh Jackson wasn't going to win that one. And honestly, I thought Hugh Jackson handled it great because you got a veteran quarterback in front of him. So the Browns, they hadn't won a whole lot up to that point. You got a veteran who can kind of help right the ship. And while the veteran's in the lineup, you got this rookie first-round quarterback who can sit back and he can learn, get the NFL way of life now, and just, take it slow and go from there. Now, the real test will be for Baker Mayfield, like I was saying earlier, when NFL defenses kind of start catching up and getting that film study on him. That's when the real test is going to be, because it's going to be what can he do well at the NFL level and can he do it consistently? Now, I think, like I said, I've said this many a times, Baker's going to be fine. But the one thing we do have to keep in mind, we've seen guys come from pass-happy offenses in college and then come to the NFL and then bottom out. So, in college, Baker Mayfield and OU, they passed all over the field. Now, this is the true test. And I think Baker will be fine. I really do. As far as Baker Mayfield's first few NFL starts, Baker Mayfield, he's went a long way into showing folks that he belongs in the National Football League. Moving right into this is some bull jive. Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin was fined $25,000 by the NFL for criticizing the refs after the Steelers' 41-17 win against the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday. USA Today reports the fine came after Mike Tomlin called the officiating a joke and said, quote, "We've got to get better as a National Football League. Man, these penalties are costing people games and jobs. We've got to get them correct. I'm pissed." End quote. I'm hot as fish grease too, Coach Tomlin. The NFL just doesn't get it. Like, at all. This is a league that just can't seem to get out of its own way. They are going way, way, way overboard with the penalties. I say this all the time. The NFL is suffering from paralysis by analysis. Fans don't tune into NFL games to watch the freaking refs. As a fan, I could not care less. About seeing the referees. Call the calls that need to be called. Yes, we get that. Call the calls that need to be called when they need to be called. Holding calls, blatant roughing the passer calls, face mask, stuff like that, etc., etc. I get it. The NFL wants to generate more offense and more points because they think that's what fans want. When in reality, fans just want to tune into a game that flows well and is not overly legislated. These football games, they're already long enough because when it comes to the NFL, I'm already giving the NFL 3 hours of my life to watch one of these doggone things, and now they want to make them longer by having the refs throw the flag more often. Like, get out of your own way. The refs are in the spotlight entirely too much this season. They have been really the last few seasons, to be honest with you. And a big part of that is the emphasis on some of these crazy rules that the NFL has enacted, like the helmet rule and the rule where you can't fall on the quarterback now. That call on Clay Matthews in the Vikings-Packers game in Green Bay a few weeks back, that was some bull jive. That game was over until Tony Corrente made that bull jive call. I honestly, as a fan, don't want to see the refs more than I have to. I don't want these calls because of this idiotic rule to affect the outcome of a game. I don't want to see another defensive guy like William Haynes of the Dolphins get hurt like he did a few weeks ago when he was trying to avoid a sack flag on Derek Carr when he hit him back in week 3. The quarterback is protected enough as it is. I get it. The spirit of these rules, I get what the intent is, and I understand all of that, but the enforcement of it has been ridiculous. On top of this fact, these refs are instructed to err on the side of caution. So, therefore, if in doubt, throw the flag and we'll just sort it out later. These football players, these guys, they're already running at a high rate of speed, and they're basically asking these dudes to try and separate themselves from a guy while both dudes are falling to the ground, which is basically physically impossible. The NFL is already fighting with wavering ratings. The ratings are up and down. They're starting to trend up a little bit, but they're still fighting that ratings fight where they're up 1 week, they're down 1 week. They're already fighting with wavering ratings. They've already fought with PR disaster after PR disaster, and yet somehow, some way, they managed to get themselves right in the middle of another one. NFL, this rule and this enforcement is some bull jive. Khabib Nurmagomedov defeated Conor McGregor in the 4th round of the UFC lightweight title fight Saturday night. This was one of the most heavily anticipated fights in UFC history. Then, of course, Khabib starts a brawl after the fight after he jumped over the octagon to attack Conor McGregor's team. This whole situation is some bull jive. You know, the UFC, they did great marketing for this fight. This was the biggest fight or one of the most heavily anticipated fights in UFC history. The marketing of it was great. The hype to it, leading up to it, was great. You know, this fight itself lived up to the expectations. The fight went all 4 rounds. It was a good fight. It was a really good fight. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But you know what? To be honest with you, I'm over Conor McGregor and his antics leading up to every fight, because this fake hype and this craziness that this dude does and his antics, it's old. Like, I'm all for trash talk. I get it. Trash talk is part of sports. When I played sports, we talk trash. I'm all for that. I love the trash talk. I love the hype that trash talk builds. But Conor McGregor he crosses the line with a lot of the things that he does. You know, if you remember back, he threw the bottle at Nate Diaz a while back. He threw the dolly in Khabib's bus a while back as well. He injured some people when he did that. He made some racial remarks towards Floyd Mayweather leading up to that fight last year. Then, before this fight, in addition to throwing the dolly and everything at the bus, he goes and he talks about Khabib's father. He calls him a terrorist. Like, he talks about his father, he talked about his religion, and then he goes and he talks about the dude's country. So he threw all kinds of personal insults towards this dude's direction. And to be quite honest with you, if I'm Khabib, I would have hopped out of that octagon too, and I would have started swinging on his team, because I've already dusted up Conor McGregor like Khabib did. I already busted him up, so now I'm about to bust his team up and the people who enabled him and in some ways egged him on to do it. And then you hear Conor McGregor fans, they got all mad at Khabib and everything else, and you know, they were saying, oh, you know, Khabib, he's this and that and the other, and da-da-da-da-da, and whoop-de-whoop-de-woo. But it's like, dude, the guy you're supporting, look at all the stuff that he's done. Look at all the trash that he's talked. Look at all these antics by Conor McGregor in the past. And now his fans want to have a problem with Khabib and his team after Khabib handled business in the octagon, busted Conor McGregor up, and then went after him and his team. Nah, bruh. Miss me with that bull jive. And as far as Cheat Meal Chronicles and Tabletop Chronicles, I don't really have any recipes for you this time around, but I do just want to share a few tips. We're coming upon the Halloween holiday. We're coming upon Thanksgiving. We're coming upon Christmas. Holiday season can be really, really tough if you're trying to watch what you eat and you're really trying to, you know, watch your intake and things like that. When I hear people talk about trying to lose weight and doing diets and everything else, a lot of the time, the first mistake that people make when they're trying to lose weight and they're trying to change up their eating habits is they get super restrictive and they start throwing around that word diet like it's going out of style. You gotta change your thinking when it comes to switching up your eating habits. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. You gotta change the way you eat. You have to change the things that you put into your body if you want to change the way your body looks on the outside. Because you can go to the gym and work out all day and all night, but if you're not eating right in the kitchen, it's a waste of time. Remember, 80-20. It's 80% of what you eat and what you put inside your body. That's going to make a difference as to what your body looks like on the outside. So, remember, 80% what you put in your body will determine what the outer body looks like. The other 20%, that's what you do in the gym. That's the hard work that goes toward the gym, the lifting, the running, the different cardio exercises, the different weight exercises, all of that. I could sit here all day and all night and tell you all about that. But, and also, when it comes to the gym, you do want to lift weights to help burn fat. You don't want to just stick to cardio, and you don't want to just lift weights. You want to get a good mixture of both of them. Because cardio, the way one of my buddies put it to me, really kind of helped me put things in perspective. When it comes to cardio and lifting weights, one of my buddies, Evan, told me something. He put it in a way that really made it stick to me. When it comes to cardio and weights helps you build the muscle. Cardio burns the fat off of the muscle so you can see that good aesthetic muscly look, if that's what you're really going for. And if you're really just trying to lower your body fat percentage, mix both of them. It helps you lose weight quicker, it helps you lose weight faster, and it helps you lose weight more efficiently. When it comes down to your diet, just make sure to eat a lot of lean protein: chicken, turkey, fish, especially like salmon. Now, if you're balling on a budget like me, stick to the cheaper protein, chicken and turkey. That's what I mainly eat 80 to 90% of the time. I like beef, but beef holds a lot of calories. So I substitute things that call for beef. I substitute it with ground turkey. So chicken, turkey, fish, stick to those. Get a lot of green leafy vegetables: spinach, collard greens, cabbage, purple cabbage, kale, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. Get a lot of vegetables. Get lean protein vegetables and some good, some decent carbs. Brown rice, oats, sweet potatoes, things like that. That's really what's gonna give you that good balance when it comes to your nutrition. That's really what's gonna give you that good balance and really help your body stay full and helps keep your metabolism going. And then don't be afraid to snack throughout the day. Now, when it comes to like different snacks, you want to watch the intake that you want to watch your intake of like tree nuts, cashews, almonds, peanuts, because yes, they are good for you, but nuts are calorie dense. So be careful about your consumption of tree nuts. When it comes to snacks, protein type snacks, you could snack on like, a little bit of cheese sticks mixed with some vegetables, those little tuna packets. There's all kinds of stuff that you can snack on. There's good healthy snacks. So you don't have any excuse when it comes down to switching up your eating habits depending on what your goals are. You don't have any financial excuse because there are things that you can find out there that'll fit any budget. Pinterest will become your best friend. Google will become your best friend. YouTube will become your best friend. Instagram sometimes will become your best friend. There's so many resources and things out there that you can put together a good program by yourself. And if you really don't know what you're doing, find a good dietitian or nutritionist to get you started. But this time of year can be especially tough on people who are looking to, change up their eating habits or looking to switch up their body. This time of year can be tough. There's a lot of sweets getting tossed around this time of year, a lot of carbs getting tossed around this time of year, especially at the Thanksgiving dinner table. And enjoy yourself sometimes. Have a cheat meal here and there. Don't be so restrictive on your diet, or scratch that. Don't be so restrictive on your eating change and your lifestyle change that when you do get a little taste of sugar or you do get a little taste of carbs, that you just go absolutely overboard. Give your body flexible options. So if you've been doing good for a week or two, have a cheat meal and then just get right back on track. Then just make sure to get up and go to the gym the next morning and get rid of it. It's really not as hard in some ways as we make it seem. It's really not. You just got to change up some things, change up your thinking, and once you do that, you're well on your way. Well, this is the end of episode 27 of the Undrafted podcast. We got some notable games coming up this weekend. We got the Broncos going against the Rams up in Denver. Can the Broncos pull off the highly unlikely and improbable upset of the league's best team in the Los Angeles Rams? I doubt it, but hey, any given Sunday, and it's snowing in Denver on Sunday too, so that might give the Broncos the upside in that game. Got the Steelers going against the Bengals. The AFC North just might be the most interesting division in the NFL because that division is wide open. The Eagles and the Giants, they played last night on Thursday. The Eagles ended up winning that one. The Giants, they look a hot mess. The Eagles look like they might be kind of starting to get it going a little bit here about this time at this point in the season. We got the Chiefs and the Patriots Sunday night. That's going to be a really good one. The two best teams in the AFC going head-to-head. Personally, I don't see Kansas City winning this one up in Foxborough. Tom Brady at home is just he's almost unbeatable at home. So that's still going to be a really good one. Kansas City, great offense, terrible defense. New England Patriots, they got Tom Brady and the rest of those cats, so no need to even say all of that. Then we got the Cowboys and the Jaguars going head-to-head on Sunday here in Dallas. That's actually going to be a really good game. We got two really good defenses going head-to-head. Dallas might have the upper hand in this one, though, because I don't trust Blake Bortles and the Jags offense. So we'll see what happens there. Well, anyway, that's the conclusion of episode 27 of the Undrafted podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr. Thank you to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, the talents, the resources to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in. And remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.